and we'll talk about doing the thing. All right, there. Now we're recording. So what we're looking for is you to say something like, hey, this is Derek Stone of insert your website here. And you are listening to Jeff Smith on Vroom, Vroom, Veer. Listen up. Something like that. You want to get all of those things in there, like your name.
Can I do the Batman voice? Hey, this is Derek Stone.
You can do the Batman voice.
Pewter. Yeah, I have boys, so they love the Lego movies, man. So
I'm Batman.
I am Batman.
That's beautiful. Yes. I like it. Yeah, go for it. Do the whole thing in your Batman voice.
Yes, I'm Derek Stone. You can find me online at derekstone.online. That's DerekStone.online. The book is Why Should I Forgive? It's coming out in June 1st.
I like it. I love it. Thank you. All right, I'm going to hit stop, and I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Steff Green, all the way from New Zealand. Thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It is going pretty good, really, considering.
There you go. Good, nice tempered answer. Yes, pretty good, considering. Yes, I feel the same way. You know, I'm still teleworking, so my job is still paying me and everything is hunky-dory. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's very strange for me because I work from home, so basically nothing has changed for me except that the whole world is insane. And
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
it's more noticeable now. It's probably always true, but this pandemic thing has made it like blatantly obvious to most people that the world out there is really crazy.
Yes.
Yes. So everybody's safe by you, right? Everybody? Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah,
me too.
We're very, very lucky to be in New Zealand. Basically, every day I wake up and I say, thank the metal gods that I am a New Zealander.
So New Zealand is on the back end of the what are they calling it? The slope?
Yeah, we've flattened the curve. We've kind of crushed the curve, really, what
That's
we've done.
great.
So we've been in we have a 4-level system, and level 4 is our lockdown, and so we've been in level 4 lockdown since I think this is the 4th week.
Okay.
And we went into lockdown like really early, like we were having 20 cases a day or something like that, and we went into lockdown. And
Smart.
at our peak, we were having like 100 cases a day, and now we're down to about 3 cases a day.
Wow.
For the whole country.
Wow. Okay. So New Zealand's getting A+ grades over there on
we are
pandemic response team. That's great.
Exactly. And like time will tell. We just, no one knows, is this the right method?
Right.
Maybe Sweden's got it right. We just no one really knows. But
right.
I feel like we might be on the right track.
Yeah. Well, you're not in Las Vegas like I am. I don't know if you've been watching the national news, but I didn't even know Las Vegas had a mayor. I never, heard about her. But lately, this week, she was on TV saying crazy things about how, Las Vegas needs to open up. Now, today. I know. Yeah, I know.
Yikes.
I think she was trying to pull a card out of Donald Trump's political card, and her advisors didn't tell her that it doesn't work for anybody else other than Trump. He can get away with anything. He can do anything. He can say anything. Doesn't matter. Everybody just go, yeah, well, that's Donald. That's the president. That's Trump. But anybody else? No. They just get beat up.
Yeah, he's special. He's very special.
He is special. It's true. let's keep calling him special.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we digress. We're talking way too much about the 900-pound gorilla, elephant, whatever you want to call it, in the room that is humanity. So let's move on from that. Let's talk about your website and what you're most excited about in your business today. That you work from home in New Zealand there.
Yes. So I am an author and I publish paranormal romance, urban fantasy, supernatural suspense books. So I write like vampires and werewolves and witches all having sex and saving the world. That's my jam.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, that's my jam. And I self-publish, so I don't have a publisher, I don't have an agent, I have nothing like that. I just write my books, I get an editor looks at them, and then I stick them up on Amazon, and for some reason people buy them, which is really great, and hopefully they keep doing it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I've had a reasonable amount of success, which has been amazing. And you know, with that, a lot of people, you know, a lot of writers talk to me and they say, you know, how do you do it? You know, how can I do it?
Right.
And so I sort of over the last year or so, I've been kind of cobbling together my process of how I do things, and I put it together into. I've written a book and I've made a course and I've got all this these free videos and kind of free articles and things like that, just about my story and about how I got to where I am and why I write the kind of books I do, and I put them all on this website, which is called rageagainstthemanuscript.com.
Gotcha.
And yeah, that's my super fun, super exciting project right now.
It sounds like a blast. And that's awesome that you get to help other people, because it's not easy. I bet there's a lot of books on Amazon that not a lot of people read, because pretty much anybody can put up any old book up there. But
exactly.
There's a trick. You got to write a good book, right?
Oh, definitely. That's like the first stage. The first of many.
You got to write a good book, and then there's still work to do. Right. Yes. That's awesome. Good. Well, good for you. Congratulations. So this is Vroom, Veer. So that means that we have to go back in time. I'm pretty sure you didn't like graduate high school and then immediately start writing supernatural romance novels.
No,
I doubt it. Okay.
Yeah,
I think so.
I mean, sort of I did, but no, I did not.
You probably were writing them, but not making any
Yes,
money.
I was definitely writing. I was definitely making exactly zero money.
Okay.
And in fact, so when I was in high school, I wrote I finished my first books, and when I was in high school, the things that were really popular at the time were these long running series like Sweet Valley High and Goosebumps and Fear Street and all those things. So I was really inspired by that.
That's the YA kind of thing.
Yeah, totally the YA kind of thing. So I wrote this I'm going to write this 100-book series, and I wrote 4.5 books, I think, of this series, and then I sent one away to at the publisher that I got the address of the publisher from the back of a Sweet Valley High book. Okay. And I sent it to their publisher, and I got this really nice form rejection letter from them. We're not acquiring, weird
IP
young adult books from 14-year-olds at this time, but in the future maybe.
Right.
Yes, so I was always writing, but
that's good. At least you were trying.
Yeah, always trying.
Nothing wrong with that.
That's me. No, but no, I never wanted to be. From a very young age, I would always say, if people ask me what I wanted to do, I would always say I want to be this and a writer and an artist. And this changed a few times, but I was very, from a young age, I always wanted to grow up and be something. I sort of didn't really enjoy being a kid very much, I think. And
the lack of power annoyed you. that kind of
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And because I'm legally blind, kids bullied me. I
Wow.
didn't have many friends, so I kind of lived in like my imaginary world, and yeah, so there was that, kind of going on as well. But I mean, the first thing I wanted to be was I wanted to be an architect, because my dad is a builder and he used to do a lot of the design work for the houses that he would build. And
Right.
so he would
Wow.
sit in his office with like these giant bits of paper, like A1 bits of paper, and draw these house plans and stuff. And I loved drawing house plans and designing my own houses and stuff like that. So that was the first. Before that, I wanted to be a World War One flying ace, like my hero Snoopy. That was the first thing.
There's a couple of things. There's a couple of problems with that plan, I think.
There's many problems with that plan, such as the fact that
Legally
World War
blind.
One is not. Yeah, legally blind. World War One is not still going on,
Right.
And you can't fly a doghouse into battle, which I
That's
didn't,
true.
Realize at the time.
Right.
But big credit to my parents. They never told me, look, you probably can't be a pilot. And they just
Good
let
for them.
me, just let me believe that for a while, which is I think is the right thing to do. For like a
you probably figured it out at some point.
Yeah, I did. I did.
And I bet you were mildly crushed. You had to go through that.
I actually not. Well, not at the time, because as you'll see, what happened was I got so obsessed with this other thing that everything else fell by the wayside.
Okay.
But it still is on my list of things. One day, I've done a lot of crazy things in my life. Like I can't legally drive, but last year I drove a tank.
Nice.
Which was incredible. Yeah, it was amazing.
There's a lot of things you can do illegally, I think.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, just to get the experience.
Just a smidge.
Yeah,
just a smidge.
There was what show was that? Have you ever watched Mythbusters?
A little bit, yeah.
There's a whole episode where they wanted to, I don't remember what they were doing, what the experiment was, but I remember very vividly that they had a blind guy driving. A lot. And
interesting.
Well, they got like this closed track. It was like one of those places that they go to do their experiments, right? So these they were not public streets, but they were streets. It was like this, I want to say it was like this abandoned military base somewhere in San Francisco area. And it was like base housing city, just like you could drive around in like a little city, and he was doing it. He was driving really well, only with verbal instructions.
Wow.
And because he was blind, he was better at the sighted people at following the instructions, because he had, no clue. Right. So I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
So you should definitely put that on your bucket list. I'm sure that somebody should put that together for, all of the blind people out there, that want to drive and can't really legally do it. There's probably a way to get that done, I think.
Totally.
Yes. Or just get a buddy to take in a parking lot or something.
Well, that may have happened several times.
Okay, good.
Can't confirm.
Can't confirm nor deny, but that may have happened. No. Good. Okay, good. Happened. Yes. Good. I like that.
Yeah, but it's still my dream. One day I will fly a plane.
You could
probably
get that done
with someone.
Too. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's not that much you can actually crash into up in the sky, apart from the ground.
You probably can't take off or land, but
probably not. But
maybe. Depends on who you're with. Again, nowadays planes are so amazingly advanced. Again, that was on Mythbusters. Both of the man, I can't say that word now. Mythbusters. Yes. They're not blind, but they're neither one of them are pilots, and they successfully landed a simulator of a big plane.
Wow.
So, right. So, don't give up that dream.
No, it's definitely there. So if there are any like really adventurous pilots listening who would like to help a blind girl,
Reach out to my buddy Steve Baxter. He's a pilot and he has his own plane and he lives in Australia. See, so
That's quite close.
yeah,
I'd fly to Australia to fly a plane.
there you go, Steve. If you're listening to the show, reach out to Steff. She's just over there. Fly your plane over there. Yeah, there you go. He's on TV in Australia now. He's one of those Shark Tank guys.
Wow.
I know. Yes, and he's like the nicest person ever. You know, you would never know he was, has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank.
I find that that's usually true with
Really?
Well, maybe not. I don't know. Well, with all of them
I've only met the one, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I've met about 3, and they're all pretty down to earth. Yeah.
This guy was he's ex-army, Australia Army, and we hung out in the first age of podcasting, but that's a whole nother story. But I didn't find out he was a multimillionaire until years and years later.
Wow.
I know, he was keeping it secret, sort of. So we all kind of knew he was an international man of mystery because of his Facebook posts, but we didn't know why. We didn't know the whole backstory of how he started one of the first telephone companies in Australia. We're like, what? Anyway, I digress yet again. Yeah, it was kind of okay. So go back to you. You're dreaming about becoming a pilot and an architect. What was the other thing?
So there was an architect, and then I can't remember what. And then Jurassic Park came out, the movie.
Yeah.
And it was actually a little bit before that, but around the time Jurassic Park came out, I became obsessed with dinosaurs, and I was going to be a paleontologist. And that lasted for about 4 years. And I mean, I know a lot of kids are obsessed with dinosaurs, but I was like next level obsessed. I didn't want to do anything in the weekends except go out and hunt for fossils. I used to, my parents had this like camcorder, and I used to like film myself giving these with like, my mum was a nurse, so she had like a nurse's uniform, which was white. And so I put that on, so it was like a lab coat. And I had all these dinosaur skeletons, and I would give these lectures as if I was a scientist and film them, like talking about the dinosaurs and the different things. And
how old are you now?
Maybe sort of 7 or 8.
Oh, okay. All right.
Kind of
7
age,
or 8.
yeah.
Okay.
So I was obsessed with dinosaurs for about 3 or 4 years, and then that obsession moved to ancient Egypt, and I was beyond obsessed with ancient Egypt and sort of all archaeological things, but particularly Egypt, until the end of high school. And so the day I walked into high school, I didn't want to be there because I knew it was going to be terrible and I wasn't going to have any friends and people were going to be awful and it was just going to be hard. But I was like, I have to do this because this is the only way I'm going to become an archaeologist. And that was essentially the thing that got me through, was that this is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an archaeologist. I'm going to go all over the world. I'm going to just, I'm going to work on sites and deserts, and I'm going to dig up amazing things, and I'm going to
find a Stargate. Yeah.
Yep. I love Stargate so much.
I love that. Yeah, I love Stargate. I need to go back and finish it. Anyway, sorry. Go on.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, and so I was always going to be an archaeologist, and I remember one day I was at high school and we had to go and see the careers counsellor. Every senior student had to see the careers counsellor.
Okay.
And
I remember I had to do it too.
Yeah, you did it too. And I grew up in this I grew up in a town, but it's in quite a rural area. So, it was about 40 people, I think, in my graduating class. And I think there was about 5 of us that actually went to university. The rest of people, they went to work on farms, they went to work locally, or they kind of went to EIT, which is like a polytechnic, and did like kind of more technical things. Became builders and farmers and stuff like that. So, and I walked in and I was a complete nerd. I was sort of top of the class, second in class.
Wow.
Was quite competitive, but yeah, I was near the top. And I went in there and I sat down and she said, well, what are you going to do when you where are you going to university, etc. And I said, I'm going to university in Auckland, which is the largest city in New Zealand. I'm going to study archaeology. And she just laughed. And she's like, no, really? And she's like,
Wow.
no, really, what are you doing? And I said,
Wow.
no, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to Auckland. I'm studying archaeology.
I want to grow up to be, what's his name? Indiana Jones.
And it's like she thought I hadn't thought about this. I wasn't serious. And she handed me all these pamphlets for law school. And she said, don't throw your life away.
Wow.
And yeah, that was wow.
Wow.
But, that didn't deter me because, that's just stupid. I kind of realized when I went out of there that, the school was a bit ridiculous. Yeah.
Most are, aren't they?
Yeah, most are. And that was okay, and it wasn't gonna hold me back. So I went to university for 4 years. I did an honours degree, and it was 4 of the most amazing years of my life because I had waited for so long to go to university, and I knew I would love it, and I did.
Wow.
And
so you're really into the academic kind of thing.
Yeah, I love it. I love learning. I loved just reading all the books. I spent so much time in the library. A couple of my friends did this third year university paper, which was an English paper. It was the literary Gothic, and I really wanted to do it, but I didn't have room in my schedule to do this paper, so I just went to the classes.
Okay.
Like a complete geek. Like I wasn't signed up to the paper. I didn't do any of the assignments. I just went to the classes.
Showed up.
Just showed up, listened to the lectures. I showed up more often than many people who actually were in the class.
Just for fun.
Just for fun. Yeah. Complete nerd.
Wow. Good for
Complete
you.
Nerd. And I had friends, and I partied a little bit, like not as much as a lot of people, but I partied a bit, and I spent a lot of time going to a lot of metal gigs and things like that. But yeah, I studied really hard. I ended up with like first degree, honours degree. I had 10 scholarships, I think. So that paid for all my university. It was an incredible experience. And all the way through, I still had this dream that I was going to be an archaeologist. And
so did you want to go out on adventures and like Indiana Jones? Okay.
That's my whole life. I wanted to be, and it's fun.
And you could fly to get there, maybe.
Exactly. And it's funny because when you study archaeology, the first lecture that you go to, they basically spend the first 15 minutes saying archaeology is not like Indiana Jones at all.
Right.
And they kind of talk about how a lot of it is like staring at the dirt, and then you go home and you study the things that you learn in the dirt. And I just thought that sounded amazing.
I love dirt.
So I was there. I started doing volunteer work on local excavations here in New Zealand. Just
there's a lot of things to dig up in New Zealand, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Our history is really interesting. It wasn't as interesting to me because I was so into Egypt and really ancient civilizations, but because we're such a new civilization,
right?
It's just all it's all very fascinating.
I think isn't there something about I remember talking to the meteor guy. I think he's an English guy, but he had a TV show on one of those like Discovery Channel or something. I think they went to New Zealand. I think maybe I might be wrong, but anyway, there was something about this place that they went climate wise that when something hit the ground, it stayed immaculate. I don't know, because of the climate. So did that sort of like, did a lot of the bones and rocks and stuff for archaeologists stay really nicely preserved in New Zealand, or am I?
I don't think anymore. Yeah, I don't think anymore, because usually things preserve, like if they're in ice, that will preserve really well, or like super dry conditions.
Right,
like different conditions preserve different things really well. But I did do this. One of the best sites I worked on was a peat bog, and the peat preserves
Oh, peat bog. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's that New Zealand accent.
That's okay. I just was like, wait, what? And then my brain processed it 3 seconds later. I was like, oh, peat bog.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
And I mean, it was a really fascinating site, and because the peat preserves things like fabric and weaving and things like that, which you never usually get.
Okay.
And so we had all this amazing, woven work. It was a Māori site, which is our Indigenous people, and so we did all this amazing woven work and kind of plant-based material that we would never usually end up preserved. So it was a really fascinating site, but as I was doing all this this work on these sites, I was starting to realize that actually with my eyesight, I was not going to be able to be a sort of on-the-ground archaeologist. Like it was just a lot of it is you're looking at two different shades of dirt and you have to dig out one shade but leave the other shade. And
right, it's one of those timeline barrier thingies, right?
Yeah, and I just could not see the difference a lot of the time.
Okay.
And so I was starting to realize that that was not my future.
Okay.
But there's so much else in the field that interests me.
Right.
Yeah, that I could have done. And but I was starting to run up against this even though I knew I could do something, I had to convince other people to let me do it.
Ah, right.
And so this became things like, there's always a job on a dig where someone sits in a tent and they make a recording of everything that's found and where it's found, and they'll often do drawings of the certain items. And that would be the perfect job for me. And it's actually one of the most hated jobs on a dig, but it's usually given to a person who's more like senior, who's quite responsible. And I could have done that. I could have done that job for every single gig, every single dig.
But you weren't senior, though.
People didn't trust me.
Right.
Because they thought I was too blind. They didn't trust people to hand me artifacts. And they would say this to my face, we just don't trust you to handle artifacts, which is ridiculous. But so I was starting to come back against that. And then I thought I sort of I had my Vroom, Veer
sure.
and my honours year. And I realized what I would really like to do is I'd like to be a museum curator, and I'd like to have I'd like to work in a museum and have a collection of artifacts that I just looked after.
Okay.
And, ran exhibits, and it seemed really creative, and that's what I wanted to do. So I started studying museum studies, and then I was trying to do volunteer work in local museums to build the experience.
Okay.
And I kept coming up against this. We don't trust you to handle the artifacts. We don't trust you to do this. We can't. We can't have you in the space. And it's ridiculous because as a blind person, you're twice as careful.
Right.
With things like that than a normal person. I'm probably less likely to drop a ancient vase than a sighted person because I'm twice as careful. But you can tell people that to their bill in the face, but they have their preconceptions about you.
Right.
And this all kind of came to a head when I spent 6 months, which is quite a long time really, volunteering at a museum in Auckland, and it's a living history museum, so it's all like little buildings set up as like a little pioneering village. And I worked as a curatorial assistant working in the collections for 6 months, and a job came up there. And it was a job just as a host, so just like walking visitors around the site and talking about the different things that you found. And I wanted this job because it was an in with a museum, and I had worked at that museum for 6 months as a volunteer, not being paid, so I knew my way around. And I went to the curator and I said, look, I would really like this job. And he looked at me and he said, well, I'm sorry, I can't give you this job. I can't hire you. He said, because you're a health and safety risk. He says, what happens if you fall in the well? And there was a well on the site, and the well I walked past every single day to go to my volunteer job, and the well is covered with a grating. So there's no way I'd fall in the well. But he's like, what if you fall in the well? And I just couldn't I just couldn't even come up with. I was just so flabbergasted. I couldn't even come up with an answer.
Wow.
And I went home and I was crying. By the time I got home, I was crying. And I was so upset. And I came home, and my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, I'm just telling him, like, I'm never going to get a job because I'm just never going to be able to convince people that I'm not going to fall in the well. Like, how can you?
Right.
How can you possibly?
Well, it's almost like you have to fight fire when something's so ludicrous. How do you fight that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How do you
fight that?
Yeah.
You can't even. Okay, you want to come up and say, "Well, that's stupid. I walk past it every day," but they've already said it.
Yeah.
And they know you walk past it every day. So you can't even you can't make a rational argument against an irrational. Yeah. Anyway. Ouch. Okay. I feel your pain.
Yeah. You've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where I had my first real big kind of veer, because I'd wanted to be this archaeologist for so many years. And my husband kind of saw that I was crying, and then he gave me a hug, and he said, well, look, you can look at this a couple of different ways. And one way you could look at it is you could say, well, actually, you've done archaeology, you've worked on all these digs, and you've done all this volunteer work in museums. And I got to go on this amazing field trip where I went with 20 other students to Greece and to Crete for 6 weeks, and worked on sites over there, and it was incredible. So, he's like, you got to do all these amazing things. So maybe you say to yourself, well, look, I've done archaeology. So now what is a thing that I would like to do that was a thing that people couldn't tell me you might fall in the well?
Right.
So what's my, well-free future?
Yes. and it better have something to do with metal. Heavy metal rock and roll. Anyway, sorry.
And so, so he said that to me, and the first thing that popped into my head, the first thing, just came like a light, was I would be a writer. That's hands down, that's what I'd be. I'd be a writer.
Wow, really? Just like that?
Yeah. Just like
if
that.
I could do anything I wanted to do, I would be a writer. Okay.
Yeah. But the thing was, I didn't know anything about how writers earned a living, or what they really did, or wasn't.
You knew about the creative part, but not the business part. How to make money, how to make a living, right?
Yep, nothing like that. So what I did was I did what any self-respecting millennial would do, and I Googled how to make a living as a writer.
What'd you find?
I found like lists, here are 10 different ways to earn a living as a writer. And I basically tried to do everything on the list. I learned what it meant to be a fiction author, which, was that you write a book and then you send the book off to a publisher, and then they probably reject it, and then you send it to another publisher, and you do that, and you do that, and you do that until they accept it. Mm-hmm. And then you wait a year, and then they'll publish it, and they might pay you a $5,000 advance, and you probably have to have 10 books out before you even start to earn a living as a fiction author. So I kind of knew from the beginning that I wanted to be a fiction author, but I knew that that was a very difficult way to earn a living. So I was trying to be practical. So I was trying to think, well, if I have the skills to be a fiction author, I need to earn a living as a writer while I'm waiting for my big break, effectively. So I started learning how to copyright. I started a blog, which was a heavy metal blog.
A heavy metal blog. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
I started just basically emailing businesses that with people I knew, and saying, look, do you need a website written? I used to hang out on Etsy quite a lot, like the handmade online place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I would sell descriptions to Etsy sellers. So sellers would come to me with like a line of jewelry.
You're
and
Jay
then I would
Peterman
write
of Etsy.
Yeah, I'd write like the description. And I did a lot of strange things like that over the years. And so I started doing that, and while I did that, I started working, kind of different museum-related, archaeology-related jobs. I worked in the exams department of the university for a little while, but I didn't like that. And I worked at the New Zealand Foundation of the Blind as a Braille transcriber. So, we would have books for the library, or people would, for instance, people would say, "Oh, could I have this menu from this takeaway restaurant that I go to all the time? Could I have that in Braille?" And then we would Braille the menu and send it out to them, things like that.
Nice. Yeah.
And it was amazing. I really enjoyed that job. But what working those jobs made me realize was that I didn't like working for other people. I really, really wanted to work for myself.
Okay.
So I was building on this sort of freelance work while I was also writing vampire books, and I was working with this traditional publisher who really liked my work, but just every book I sent her, she's like, "It's not this book. I really want to publish you, but it's not this book. It's not this book. Send me a different book or rewrite this book." And so basically I ended up, how did it go? I had so much freelance work after about 6 years that I was at the point where I dropped down to, I think it was 3 days at my Braille transcribing job, and then it was a couple of days at home freelancing, and then I quit the job altogether and freelance full time. And I thought this was what I wanted. This was what I've been working for. I work for myself. I'm a full-time writer. I'm not publishing
and
fiction,
I'm working for myself. Right.
Yeah, and I'm working for myself, and I hated it.
Home.
Yeah,
you hated it.
Yeah, I hated it.
Oh no.
And I didn't know I hated it until I started doing it, but I hated it. And what I hated, it built and built on me, and there was lots of reasons why I hated it. A big one was that my husband and I, at the same time, we had decided that we were going to fulfill a dream that we had, which comes back to the thing I was talking about being an architect. We designed our own house, and we were going to build. Wow. We bought some land, and we're going to build our dream house, which we designed ourselves. We were going to do a lot of the work ourselves.
Right.
So we were embarking on this massive financial risk, effectively.
Wow. Okay.
In this big project at the same time that I quit my job. And so I felt this tremendous pressure that I'd put on myself to earn the money and stay afloat. And if I didn't, if everything fell to pieces, it would be my fault. And it wasn't, that wasn't what my husband had said or anything like that. It was what I'd put on the pressure I'd put on myself.
Right.
And that was a big factor. And I just felt like I could never stop working. Because you never finish the to-do list. You have 5 articles for this client to write, 5 articles for that client to write, and you finish the 5th article when you're like, okay, that's done. But then you've got 20 other articles that you have to write, and it never ended. And I never felt like I could relax. Like I felt every single time I sat down to watch TV or something, there was this nagging, you should be writing, you should be working.
Wow. Yeah.
In the back of my head.
You're not making any money now, kind of.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Wow. It's all going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
Those guys in their head.
Yeah. And I thought like this whole idea was that, now that I didn't have a day job, I'd have more time to be able to finish my freelance work, and I'd have more time to work on my fiction, which was what I really wanted to do. And in fact, I was so stressed and so worried that I did hardly any fiction work at all.
Right.
And I was just starting to really resent working for my clients who, were people who had these really amazing creative businesses. And I was like, I'm just working to make other people's dreams come true, not my own dream.
Right.
And that was starting to wear on me. So I did this full-time thing for 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year. I can't quite remember. And one of my clients kept bugging me. He worked for a local tech startup.
Okay.
And he kept bugging me, come and work for us full-time.
Wow.
Because he really needed, he had to build a team, and he really needed someone. And after a while, it started to sound like a good idea. So I contacted him. More
stability, right?
Yeah, more stability, and I could work 40 hours, and then after 40 hours, I could say, I'm not I'm done.
You can
And
flip the switch
Yep,
and still get the
flip the
paycheck.
switch.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's a lot of
And
appeal
so
there.
yeah, and it started to really appeal. And so that was probably my second big Veer,
Right.
was that, I basically went to him and I said, well, look, so if I work for you, this is how much money I want, and I want to work from home, I think it was 4 days a week, and come into the office 1 day a week. And he counted and said, 3 days a week. So 3 days a week in the office, 2 days. No, 3 days a week at home, 2 days in the office. And I said, done.
That's not so bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was great.
It's a good negotiation right there.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
So I worked for that company for 3 years, I think. Then I worked for another tech company for a bit, and then that company imploded, and I was basically, and so what I did was, when I started working for this tech company, I dropped all of my freelance work, just basically wound up that side of the business completely. And I said, the only thing I do, when I get home, when it's my own time, is I have fun with my fiction.
Oh, nice.
And this was around the time. Yeah. And this was around the time where the publisher that I was working with finally said, this is the book. We're going to give you a publishing deal.
Wow, really?
And it was amazing. And I was so excited. I'm like, I have finally made it. It's really going to happen. I'm just going to work at this for a few more years, and then I'll be a fiction author, and it'll be amazing. And then what happened was the publisher, the editor who I've been working with, decided to retire. And the publishing house decided that this would be a really good time to take a look at her imprint and cut it down, basically cut it in half. And so they cut half the books that she was going to publish, including my books. So the publishing deal that I had,
Vaporized.
that I've been working for about 10 years on, gone. And I was just looking at having to start this whole thing all over again.
Did you still own the book?
Yeah, I still own the book.
Okay.
And
see, I know another author that actually had to buy a book back.
It does. Oh God, it does happen.
Have you gone through that? It sucks, right?
No, I haven't personally, but yeah, it sucks.
Right. Anyway, so sorry, digress. Okay, good. So you still own those books? Good.
Yes, I did. And it was around this time where I was starting to read articles online about people who were publishing their books as ebooks, and people were reading them on this newfangled device called Kindle, and they were doing really, really, really well. Because before the Kindle, self-publishing was it was like only this thing you did if you was, had like weird religious tracts or poetry books that you wanted.
You're writing like a manifesto that you're going to give to your followers. Yes.
To sell from the back of your car or whatever, because that was, that was self-publishing was just it was not the thing that you did if you were a serious writer.
Right.
But people were doing really well with this Kindle, and then also around this time, my husband bought me an e-reader, and so I started reading on an e-reader, and I started realizing, oh my God, this thing is amazing. Because for me, it means because I read with the book so close to my face.
Okay.
Because I can't see, the e-reader means I can enlarge the text on every single book I read. It makes every single book accessible.
Wow.
And I can carry around a whole library.
A library of books, yes. Yeah.
Of books, and it was the coolest thing. And so I was starting to read about people doing really well on the Kindle, and I was starting to think, well, maybe I'll give this a go. So I self-published the series that
got
the
canceled,
publisher,
basically.
Yeah, that got cancelled. So I did that, and it didn't do very well, I'll be honest. I was making maybe $20 a month off of it.
Right. Hey, that's something.
It's something, yeah. It's something, and
your books made money. That's what.
Yeah,
right.
And that was kind of the important thing. I went through the whole process. I found a cover designer. I found an editor. And I wrote a blurb, and I learned all these things, and I learned all about the publishing process, and then I pushed publish, and it was just so exciting, and I could hold my book in my hands, and I was like, man, this is so much fun. I just want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And even though it wasn't really selling, I kept wanting to
At
find
least the
ways
creative part of you was having fun.
Yeah, completely satisfied.
Yes.
And I thought, yes, I want to keep doing this. And so the first series that I published was a super serious, quite dark science fiction series. So kind of in the vein of China Mayville or Neil Stephenson kind of thing.
Okay.
And that was who I thought I was as a writer. And then, and here comes another
Big Veer.
Yeah, another big Veer. And then I was at a party with some friends, and one of my girlfriends, was talking about 50 Shades of Grey. And all the writing world was talking about 50 Shades of Grey at this time. And so I had read the first couple of chapters, but I couldn't get any further than that because I thought the writing was pretty appalling.
Okay.
And this friend of mine loved the books, absolutely loved them. And so she was talking about how much she loved them, and I was kind of being a bit of a
snob.
Snob about it. And,
it's okay.
I said some things.
We all have our snobby moments. It's okay. I'll let you go. Yeah.
Yep. And I said some things, and it's like she's probably getting a bit annoyed with me. And so she says, well, it's not like you could write a book like that. And
challenge.
And I sort of thought, I sort of said, yeah, you're probably right. That's not really my thing. But in my head, I sort of went, well, challenge accepted.
I could probably do it way better.
And so in secret, without telling anybody, not even my husband, I wrote this 30,000 words, a really short novella, which was about a guy who was a really reclusive artist, and he lived in this big old crumbling house in England. And he hadn't come out in 10 years. But he was also a shapeshifter. He was a fox shapeshifter.
Okay.
And
nice.
It was about him, and he had been in touch with this gallery curator who happened to be a very beautiful young woman, and she was kind of pulling him out of his shell. And there was like a shifter war, and all this crazy stuff going on, and it was a romance, and it had sex in it. And I thought, well, I'll publish it under a secret pen name.
Okay.
So my mum never finds out. And then
perfect.
And then in 6 months' time or something, I might tell my friend or I might tell my husband about it, and we'll just have a laugh.
Okay.
So I didn't. I wasn't really thinking about this being my, representing me to a certain extent. So I didn't, I hired someone to make me a cover, and I think I paid them $50. And I said, just make a cover that really, looks like a paranormal romance should look. And I, read 50 blurbs of paranormal romances and wrote a blurb for my book that sounded like, kind of like their blurbs.
Right.
And I published it under the secret pen name, and then it sold like 1,000 copies in a week.
Wow. That's better than the first books.
Yes, it's much better than the first book.
As it turns out, I think women like to read about sexy romance.
It seems that they do, which is really awesome to me.
I concur. Good for you.
Yeah, and so that's what.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I did. And I kept thinking, something's gone wrong.
I could do this more, probably.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of kept thinking like, oh, Amazon sent me someone else's royalties by mistake kind of thing.
Really? Yeah.
And they're going to call me, and they're going to say, oh, we're going to take that back. But they never called. And so, and it kept selling. And so I kind of realized I had to tell my husband that I made made a decent amount of money this month, but it wasn't from my super serious science fiction. It was from this 30,000 word smutty werewolf novella.
Which is awesome.
And when he had finished cracking up laughing, he said, are you going to write some more? And I thought, well, yes, yes, I am. And I finished these. I wrote 3 books in this series, and I had so much fun doing it. It was just, and part of that fun comes from actually having readers and actually having that feedback.
Yeah, of course, right.
And like knowing that people.
Well, then the world
really
comes more alive.
Exactly, and when you know people are really excited to find out how a story ends, you're excited to find out how the story ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had so much fun writing these books, and then I finished that series, and then I just kept writing them basically.
So let me ask you a question that I always ask all writers. So have you ever heard of the idea of? So Stephen King is sort of like, he calls himself a gardener, right? So he goes to the world, and he sort of like looks around for like fruit and vegetables and then picks them and puts them in the book. Right. And he really doesn't know where it's going to go. Right. And he hates writing endings. Yeah. And he classifies that as the gardener style of writer. And then there's the other writer. I think of a friend of mine, well, not a friend of mine, another author that I know. And he considers himself an architect. Right. So he imagines like a really big bombastic ending in his weirdo, sci-fi thrillers that he writes. Scott Sigler. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's awesome. But, and then he works backwards from that, how to make that plausible. Right. So the audience buys in as they step by step get to the amazingly impossible boom ending, So which camp do you fall into? Do you go gardening or do you architect?
I am thoroughly, utterly 100% a gardener.
Really? That's so weird.
Absolutely. Yeah,
That's
I definitely pick things out of the world.
The garden. And right. You just go visit the garden and see what you find.
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
So is it still hard to write endings then?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I sort of, when I start, I mean, because I write romance, there's
tropey endings. Right.
Yeah, it has to end a certain way.
Sure.
So it has to have a happily ever after. But part of the challenge of being a romance writer is you basically start with 2 people who should absolutely, on paper, not be together.
Right. Right.
Like the last 2 people in the world that should be together for either for its external reasons, like he's a werewolf and she's a werewolf hunter.
Right.
Or for internal reasons, like she can't trust men because her father was a horrible person, so she feels like she can't trust men. But then he is the kind of person that desperately needs. He has to have the trust of a woman, or he can't deal, or something like that. So there's either or both of those things at the same time.
Right.
So like how do you get those 2 people that absolutely should not be together, but against all odds they fall in love?
Right.
But now you have to get them to the happily ever after, and that's quite fun.
Sure. Yeah. And it's a little bit architect-y too. So there's still some architecture involved, even if you are 100% a gardener, right?
Yeah. So maybe I'm like 90%.
Well, I think everybody has to architect a little bit. Yeah. Otherwise, you don't have a plot.
So like usually when I start a book, I kind of know what's going to happen in the first few scenes, and when you write those scenes you start to get this idea of maybe how I want the story to end,
right,
but you have no idea how you're going to get there.
Okay.
Absolutely no idea at all. And
interesting. So you just follow the story basically.
Yeah, follow the story, and I just trust myself that eventually I'll figure it out. And it's funny because a lot of my stories have a real mystery kind of bent to them. So you're always planting clues,
right?
And so like I always plant clues, but sometimes I have no idea how the clue is going to end. So I have this.
So you're just randomly throwing clues around and then tie them together later. That's perfect.
Yeah,
it's got to be the best way to do it.
Yeah. So I have this one series which I'm just about to finish. It's 6 books long, and in the 3rd book, the main female character meets a woman, and the woman says, "Next time I see you, you will be covered with blood." And I wrote that, and I have. And I know that in the 6th book, which I'm just about to start writing, that's got to happen. She's got to meet
pay
that woman,
off. Yes.
And she's going to be covered with blood. But I have no idea
how you're going
whose blood that is.
Whose blood it is.
I don't know whose blood it is.
You don't know how you're going to get there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have
but the fun of it,
an idea.
The fun of it is, it's like figuring that shit out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more about, do you think of it more of a problem solving or of a journey of discovery?
It's
a little bit of both.
A little bit of both, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do find if I plan out books, when I started writing mysteries, all the advice is you absolutely have to plan everything out. So I started trying to plan them out. And I found that when I planned them out, I didn't want to write them.
Right.
Because I was like, well, I know what happens. So for now it's boring.
That's great. Yes. Yeah, I get it. It's almost like you want to have this thing that tickles that piece of you in there that's laughing and having a good time discovering. And then the problem solver has to go, okay. All right. Now, how the hell do we get there? Because I got to finish that, right? It's almost like you're making problems for yourself to solve.
Exactly.
Well, that's great. Now, see, I would have fun hanging out with you while you were writing. That would be fun. Okay. You know what? This has been a blast, but we've been talking a little bit longer than we were supposed to. That's okay. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
That's okay. So let's start wrapping up. Tell people how they can best get in touch with Steff Green. Did I say that wrong? No. Yeah, I did.
No, that's right.
I got it right. Suddenly I was like, wait a minute. What the hell is your name? I've been looking at your website a little bit too much, so I forgot what your real name was. Okay, Steff Green. Good. It's on the screen. Talk a little bit more about how people can best get in touch with Steff Green on whatever, their Twitters and their Facebooks and their Googles.
All the things, yes. So probably the best place to... So I have the site for writers, which I already talked about, which is called Rage Against the Manuscript, because it's totally badass.
Totally badass metal.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
So if you're a writer and you're really interested in kind of learning about self-publishing and making a career out of this and doing the things, whether you write fiction or non-fiction or poetry or anything like that, I would check out my website, which is so if you go to www.rageagainstthemanuscript.com/hello, I have got a free ebook that you can download, which is all about basically what is it about? It's called Unleash the Beast, Releasing Your Inner Writing Monster, and it's basically all about like you're making writing a kind of a part of your creative process and kind of how to start thinking about building a writing career. And yeah, it's quite cool. So that's there. And you can also join, we have a Facebook group, private Facebook group for Rage Against the Manuscript. So I think it's Facebook/group/Rage Against the Manuscript. And that's a really great place to hang out. Otherwise, I really am digging Instagram at the moment. So I'm on Instagram as Steff Metal, STEFFMETAL.
Love it.
Is me, yeah. And then otherwise there's heaps of ways to contact me through my website. And and my pen name, if anyone is interested, is Stephanie with 2 F's, Stephanie Holmes. And you can find all my paranormal romance and urban fantasy on Amazon.
That's awesome. So I have a bunch of linking to do. That's good. I like it. You find all of those links in the show notes. Okay, Steff Green, this has been a blast. Thank you for hanging out with me for a little more than an hour. But I was having so much fun, I kind of lost track of time. Okay.
Me too.
All right, you have a good one. Thanks for hanging out with me.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
Cheers, Jeff. Bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.